a lot of the magic happens with the collisions, right? People collisions, right? And the thought that you are only 2 handshakes away from needing what you need.
Welcome to the Texas Embassy podcast. I'm actually really excited to have you here as a guest. We're going to be talking about technology, which is very fun, but more importantly, where it came from. My son is a collegiate swimmer, or soon-to-be collegiate swimmer.
Right.
And as I was studying kind of you and the background of your organization, I'm going to let you do the intro. I started looking for use cases. And in fact, one of the suits was a spin-out of your organization. So with that, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so pleasure to be here. Appreciate the invite. So Walt Ugalde, born in San Antonio, Texas, military brat, lived in the states of New Mexico, Colorado, Hawaii, which ironically are the markets that I work in for what I do here at NASA. On the swimsuit, the laser suit. So I'm just going to jump straight into that.
Go right ahead. I dig it.
Because it's so cool, right? So in 2004, I think after the Olympic performance, NASA Langley got approached because they had fluid dynamics and some wind tunnel capabilities, and the U.S. Olympic team wanted new suits made. So they leveraged our technology. I think they made a suit that was a type of like laser welded seams. It was so efficient that 98% of the swimming medals from the 2008 Olympics were derived, or someone wearing a laser suit won a medal, and it was like 98% of them. It was so successful that it got banned.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah, no, it got banned. Right?
I didn't go that far down in the paragraph.
So it was like, hey, this space age technology. It's like, no, that's literally high tech stuff that gave everybody a competitive advantage, particularly the American swimmers. So yeah, that was a great example of a public-private joint venture. It was the early days back in 04, 08 timeframe when we were just, from a policy standpoint, starting to take a look at what a commercial crew program would look like and public-private ventures. And I would say that would be the very beginning of where we're at today, right?
Yeah, and there's more cases, right? That was one.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
I was just telling you earlier when we were off camera, but super soakers, like I appreciate that
Right.
NASA engineer. I had so much fun with
Right.
that technology.
I think a lot of folks would be surprised to learn that LASIK's eye surgery, so the way they kind of line up your eye and the laser system so that they can kind of zap your eye to get it back into the right shape, was derived off some space station docking mechanisms, the station and shuttle mechanisms. The way that kind of lines up, that technology was spun out into that market.
Well, thank you, NASA, because I had the surgery done.
I did too.
Wow.
I had one. Yeah. And the ceramics that are in the Invisalign braces, that kind of material came from NASA material science side of the house. Everyday stuff, GPS systems, right? When you fly, avionic software, ceramic brakes that came from the space shuttle, just lots of day-to-day stuff that folks just are touching every day and they're just completely unaware of, right? Even Oakley sunglasses, the Ray-Bans, all the coatings that were originally on these helmets of the astronauts to protect them from the UV rays, right? All of that got spun out to the market. I think people are shocked to learn that the original Air Jordans, the insoles, came out of JPL, one of our engineers.
Wow.
Yeah. So lots of cool stuff. And then there's lots of, high-tech stuff. Those are obviously consumer type of elements.
I know we're going to talk about books, but I'm just thinking to myself, I would have loved to subscribe to that kind of book. Like what's spun out, right? Spun out from NASA.
Yeah. So we have a whole, it's a online web, NASA spinoffs. I think we just came out with the latest edition, 2026 or 2025. And it details all kinds of stuff that we've commercialized over the years with our partners.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a podcast series right there. We should just kind of
Yeah.
spin off and talk about that. But how did you get into this? I mean, are you a engineer, or are you a PhD, or
So that's
a genius of sorts? How did NASA get a hold of you?
So that is a long question, and it kind of mirrors the story of being a military brat, right? You kind of go with the flow. You bounce around from place to place. You acquire life knowledge. We talked about you learn how to assimilate fast. You learn how to make friends. You learn how to network. You get real resourceful. My background, actually, I started out in pre-med at Texas A&M. First generation college student, had no idea when I showed up. I was writing a check for my tuition. Lady asked me, "Hey, what, you didn't declare a major?" And I remember asking her, it's like, "Well, what's that?" Yeah, I mean, literally first gen, right? I think my mom went to the 8th grade and that was it. Dad, high school, and then Air Force in Vietnam. So I just remembered I was under the gun, and my next door neighbor was a doctor, and we used to lift weights together in the garage. And I was like, "Doctor," and the lady's like, "Okay, pre-med."
Pre-med.
Yeah. So after a year of struggling through that, had a friend, and she had a bunch of drawings in her dorm room. Asked her if she was an artist. She said, "No, that's my major." I'm like, "Ooh, what's that?" And it was architecture. So I switched to architecture, thinking
Building, designing.
Well, at the time, I thought it was just art. Yeah. I didn't know until like my junior year when we actually started doing hardcore architectural engineering and all the drawings and all that. And I realized there was this thing called marketing. And I was like, that's where I need to be. At the time, I was on an academic scholarship, had a last semester. So did that. Went and when I graduated, got a job in Honolulu, Hawaii with an international architecture firm. We did a couple of big projects. One of them was kind of the land use study for the Disney Aulani area out on the west side of Oahu. We did the big airport renovation, the Waikiki Convention Visitors Center.
You're a builder.
Yeah, I would say more of a kind of strategic a strategic planner, visionary, creative kind of guy that brings all the pieces together. Long story short, I ended up back in San Antonio working for River Center Mall in Fiesta, Texas in marketing and advertising. Found my way onto the marketing side after I decided to pivot from the facility piece of the puzzle. Ultimately ended up in Las Vegas working for the Convention Visitors Bureau. The ad agency at the time was called L&L Partners. And in the middle of that, got laid off. It was my first real big experience of when budget crunch come to big corporations, right? The
cycles of life.
Yeah. So called a friend of mine back at NASA just to chit chat, and they had mentioned that her team, a lot of folks left. I said, "Well, that's interesting. I just got laid off." So she asked me to come back, build a self-managed work team on the facility side. Rebuild the relationships and start laying out a strategic plan for a lot of what we were doing on the flight ops side, the mission ops side. So that's how I found my way back into NASA on the facility side. I ultimately ended up converting to a civil servant on the center ops piece of the puzzle, and grabbing the data for that 20-year strategic plan required me mapping into our partnerships office, our advanced planning office. When I got there, they realized that I thought differently than most of the traditional engineers, and it was a skill set at the time that was needed because we were right on the front end of pivoting our business model.
Perfect place, perfect time.
Yeah. So, and the skill set it's not unlike a economic developer, a city manager, where you're responsible for the vision of the city, the long-term planning, the short-term executing of it from a budget standpoint, getting shareholder buy-in, communicating the strategic plan to everybody, taking a look at all the different assets, seeing where they're at on the product life cycle curve, is something being on the growth curve or something on the decline, matrixing all of that stuff, and then figuring out where the holes are to kind of pivot and either build new facilities, retrofit new ones, or bring in whole new programs, right? So when you think about pivoting a large institution, there's, usually about 5 pillars on our side. There's the flight ops piece of the puzzle. There's the institutional operations. You've got the early stage technology development stuff. Obviously, you got legal pieces of the puzzle, and you got workforce, right? And so
It's the infrastructure.
yeah, so I was able to look at all that and facilitate that process and lay out a plan. That was 2008, got us to 2028. So we're kind of on the back end of the last section of that. Colleague of mine that I work with took the plan over, has expanded on it. That's getting us to where we need to be for all things lunar base.
I was just about to say, Walt, you should be planning for the moon now, right? It's like or Mars.
So so it was I didn't know how that background was going to come together. In the early days of my career, it was just straight up facilities. We really didn't require the kind of random skill set that I had, right? But now where we're at, mixing non-traditional folks that have kind of that industry awareness, that have that business acumen, that bring a different lens to the problem-solving equation, in addition to us always at JSC having very deep technical know-how, very strong leaders, and the continuity of our leaders from each era. I think the last 5 center directors, going all the way back to Jefferson Howell, that was the 2000 to 2005 timeframe, somewhere around there. That was when we were first starting to take a look at what this commercial pivot looked like, right? Commercial crew, and then each center director after that, it's like a relay race, right? They all took the baton and ran with it, and it's been trying to change a large organization like we have, and intentionally disrupt yourself so that you have a sustainable exploration program. It's difficult, but it is definitely easier when you have the kind of leadership that we have had and continue to have.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, it really is, right? Because there's a lot of change going on, but there is always a steady hand that's guiding us through it, and that's true to this day.
I mean, there's so many books or examples of the leadership excellence coming from NASA or developed at NASA, and I think that is definitely one of the key ingredients for success, right?
Right.
Is having great leadership that can foster the vision and allow for some flexibility and adaptiveness within the environment to kind of excel.
Yeah, I agree. It's not an easy thing to do. It's easy to just kind of do the status quo, and it's another thing to take a look at yourself and say, hey, in 20 years we need to be different. We need to look different. What do we need to start doing now, right? And a lot of folks are like, why are we doing this now?
Yeah, that strategic mindset, right?
You think about if you have a startup mindset, right, where you iterate, pivot, right? You launch, scale, right? Even when you're scaling, you're pivoting, right? You always got your antennas up looking for market intel that tells you when to move, right? That is something that our organization at JSC, our center, has done extremely well. And I can recall a lot of our leaders back in my early days on the facility side. They started out in cubicles. They moved into the small private offices, of group leads, branch chiefs, and now they're deputy center directors, right? Associate directors. They're running the show, and just watching them kind of move their career through these pivots, right? And are the ones that were executing at early career stage, and now they are the ones that are leading the charge. It's been an incredible privilege to see that, right?
I had dinner last night with a former NASA employee, and listening to her journey of coming in, and she could actually see the return. And it wasn't like something that was in 30 days, 90 days. It was like, no, we're going to put a robot on Mars.
Right.
And that was a project. And then another round of projects. And so just seeing almost like an end state keeps folks there. And again, they can go create more value and more value and more value. And like what you were just talking about, growing up within that organization. I think like Costco I think Costco likes to hire from within, and there's some power behind that.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you look at some of the, I'm sure they're, business school case studies, right?
Absolutely
like
right.
Blockbuster Video, right?
When you don't adapt,
right?
when you don't that.
Right, and
Kodak, I
then
think Kodak actually was the first.
Kodak, right? Because at the time, one of their CEOs had a software engineering background, I think, and they were going round and round about how to pivot it. And I think they just said, "Hey, we're about this,
Right.
and that's what we're going to do." And of course, the digital side took off.
So
Right.
speaking of that, like, in their case, they had the intellectual property that would have allowed for a pit fit. And you're in the commercialization ecosystem. So I don't know if you want to extract, like, what's your mission right now?
So my mission from my job is technically it's called the Technology Transfer Industry Engagement and Entrepreneurship Lead. So it's we got T2E2, Technology Transfer Entrepreneurship and Engagement. At a higher level, my job is it's basically, like I was saying earlier, it's like an account executive would be in an ad agency or a marketing consultancy, right? So I sit in between industry, decision makers, startups, folks with good ideas, and then the technical people back at my side, right? And so I'm kind of a matchmaker, if you will. I educate folks on a lot of the early stage innovation programs and portfolios that are available to industry, academia, startups. And then I also make our technical folks back home aware when I do see technology on the street that I think might be of interest to us. So, I'll make introductions, bring folks in. So, it is truly kind of one of those things where we talk about spin out, spin in. We are trying to develop technologies. We're also looking for technologies to bring in. Truly, when we talk about integrating, commercial entities into the NASA mission, what does that look like, right? And I think you and I in the industry that you're in and my previous careers, we understand intuitively that a lot of the magic happens with the collisions, right? Collisions, right? And the thought that you are only two handshakes away from needing what you need or meeting that brain behind that idea that enables or unlocks a technical need or a gap, right? And then matching them into the appropriate early stage innovation program. We call it the catalyst. So it's the catalyst for innovation. There's about 5 or 6 different components of it. The SBIR, STTR. I think in the DOW world they call them SIBRs and sitters.
SIBRs and sitters.
Yeah, SIBRs and sitters. The intellectual property commercialization, the software side of the house. We have prizes, challenges, crowdsourcing. We've got space technology research grants for academic institutions. There are tipping point challenges, flight opportunities. So all of that. So depending on where an innovator or a company or a venture is on their product life cycle, right, and the maturation of their product or their service, we've got a program that we can fit them into. 9 times out of 10, they're completely unaware of it, right? And then the other piece of the puzzle is getting them into the proper legal product that enables that transaction, right? That becomes an unknown as well, and that's where the folks on the partnership side of the house at JSC and myself, where we facilitate that process. We've got a team of agreement folks that enable that whole piece of the puzzle. It's all, kind of centralized through a community of practice attached to all the technical orgs. We've got really, really good legal team at JSC. I appreciate them tremendously. They are good advisors and counselors when it comes to helping us help these companies come in through either the JSC front door or just through meeting them at an event like we'll have tonight. So yeah, that's a lot, but that's
sound like you have the coolest job
in a nutshell.
Ever,
That's kind of what I do, right? It's in the beginning, it's a lot of people power,
right?
But as you are aware, you've got to have some technical competence to know what you're talking about, but you got to have some emotional intelligence when it comes to people smarts as well, right? So you got to be able to kind of meet people where they're at. You've got to kind of enter their world through their modality and their cadence. And then you've got to package things and structure things easily for them so that it's not one of those, hey, we're the government, we're here to help, fill out this form and we'll get a hold of you, right?
Go to this website.
Yeah, and I don't do that, right? We I tell folks, here's, if you want to connect on LinkedIn. I had a part-time gig when I was in Silicon Valley back in the early 90s. I spent a year out there with a colleague of mine, and I worked at Whole Foods. Just part-time, and this is where my movie background came into play too. So is a animatronics company. We did Free Willy in 1993.
Wow.
But while I was doing the Whole Foods thing, I remember part of the training is like, hey, when a customer asks you, where the tomatoes are or where is something, you don't just point to the aisle and say it's over there. You walk them over there and you grab the product off the shelf and you make sure it goes into their hand, right? And I believe Whole Foods started in Austin.
Yes, I think.
Yeah. So, when you talk about the Texas connection to innovation and how we do partnering and just the cultural piece of the puzzle of that, right? So that lesson, as simple as it was, is one of the key ingredients that I leverage when it comes to helping folks find their way into NASA, right? Making sure that there's not a drop off, they're not thrown over the wall. We have one of our core competencies at JSC is systems engineering and integration, and it's kind of like you don't throw something over the wall. It gets passed, so someone's working on it, another team puts their hand on it, it gets passed over, the hand rotates, so that item is never not touched, right?
Yeah, it's never dropped, right?
Correct, and it's that same philosophy, just in a simplified kind of retail version, if you will. But it works, right? And I think a lot of our customers really appreciate that, because when you say, hey, we're different, this is the new NASA, we're doing public-private partnerships, blah blah blah. In industry, they know what that means because they are operating kind of in that modality. For a lot of us to just kind of come in as a co-op and we work our whole careers at NASA, we don't ever get that kind of experience, right? We are taught you need to be the smartest on this piece of the puzzle so that we have the most reliable vehicle to make sure the astronauts get to where they need to be and fly home safely, right? So we can all celebrate that mission. So yeah,
I love everything you're saying, because again, it talks about a lot of, at least what you're picking up is maybe a common denominator is like that Texas culture.
Yeah.
And this is the Texas Embassy podcast, and so let's lean in on Texas. Like, what have you found? I had the space commissioner here, great podcast with Norman, and just to see the amount of activity that is going on just in the border of Texas alone.
It's incredible,
and it's always been, when you think the movies Houston, right? That's the first word that comes out.
Right.
But now in the private and commercial, the public and the private sector, everything is happening.
Yeah.
You must be a busy man.
Yeah, so I do get to travel quite a bit across Texas, South Texas, San Antonio, obviously the Houston area. We do I call it the research triangle, UH, Texas A&M, UT, where they've got a lot of crossover DoD research coming in, El Paso, right? All of that up into the Dallas, Fort Worth area. So we do see a lot. I will say this. I remember, my early career, I was able to I would go to the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce meetings where Henry Cisneros was the mayor, and they were starting to do the master planning for SeaWorld and the 151 highway, the Stotzer Freeway, which I am a good family member with them, with Raymond Stotzer, who used to be the director of the Texas Department of, what is it called? The
Transportation?
Yeah. And so I got to see all of that, including like the Alamo Dome, and got to see the seeds of where Texas was headed, right? And then with that, you fast forward where, we had this, I think the state had, from an economic development standpoint, Texas wide open for business, right? The
tagline.
Yeah,
right?
you remember that? And so that was the beginning of it. And when I talked about the consistency of strategic vision with leadership, Texas has had that for a long time, right? And that's one of the cool things about doing business in Texas and being from Texas and actually being allowed to do what I do here.
Yeah, now contributing to that.
Correct. And so,
in a more impactful
and
way.
then if you think back when Kelly Air Force Base got bracked, right? It is now Port San Antonio. Back then, I think the Cyber Command started coming in. They started partnering with UTSA, the Alamo College and Palo Alto College systems as well to start building that infrastructure. And then, fast forward to where we're at now. Well, obviously, you have Johnson Space Center in Houston, right, as an anchor tenant there with petrochemical.
Right.
But now you look at the Texas Space Commission and what we're doing, right? The first series of investments are down in Houston. We're building the Texas Space Institute through Texas A&M down there. That building is
El Paso got the biggest initial tranche of that. So when you said El Paso,
and I would say from a Texas standpoint, don't sleep on El Paso. There's some very high-tech stuff going on down there, and it's flies under the radar. But when they pull the curtain back, you're like, oh my God! It's like, wow.
Well, I was stationed at Wismer, right? Yeah. So I was there, and a statistic that captured me was, I guess, the per capita PhDs that are there, and then I said, where are they going to live? In El Paso. Where are they going to grow? It's either Cruces or El Paso.
Right.
And then Huntsville, Alabama is kind of the secondary or between the two.
Yeah.
So space and space.
They're connected.
Warner von Braun came to Huntsville and tested there in White Sands.
Yeah. And I think, if you look at Texas' economy, Texas was its own nation. Mm-hmm. I think we're about the 7th largest economy in the world.
Yeah,
right.
7th or 8th. I mean, we're probably by the end of this podcast, we're probably 6th now.
Right, and then if you think about our aerospace cluster, the civil space and the mill space, and then the supply chain that is being developed to basically enable missions on both sides of that space equation, right? I think that's what you're starting to see here in Austin significantly.
Absolutely.
You have companies that are not only
there's space development corporation, or it's like a type of EDC. They can do these type.
You're seeing these startups have dual customers, right? In the space economy, NASA is one. Then they have the military space as another, and sometimes they have tertiary. They're part of a larger supply chain network, right?
Icon just got another big, when you started talking about lunar planning, and immediately I was going to say, hey, you should go talk to Icon. They probably need to build a city there on the moon.
I think we do have one of the Icon built analogs at Johnson Space Center that we use for Mars simulations. So they go from building lunar habitats to 3D printing elements, and now they're out here in Texas building whole master plan communities using that technology, right? How's that? That is just incredible. And who would have ever thought, right? That
thank goodness for
that a
NASA.
Space program, right, could seed a whole side of economic development, regional vitality, pivot businesses, right? When you talk about like moving the cheese in the entrepreneurial world, right? That was literally something that allowed that whole industry to start thinking about how they build differently, right? And then you get into the whole sustainability and the component of hardening of structures, right? So from hurricanes, from storms, tornadoes, right? And that's a very viable option just because of the structural integrity of how they're built with that technique.
A great scene, I think, I forget, The Martian. Actually talk about the wind and variance to degree. I would have never considered environmentals on a different planet to that degree. It was a great illustration of that. And I'm sure that's something that doesn't elevate immediately, right?
Yeah.
We can build to the U.S., environment, or I should say the Earth's environment, right? But you have to kind of measure, understand before you set a human.
Exactly.
On that.
When you see the pictures of the planets and these concepts, they're very serene photos, but the environments are not serene. Yeah. They're the weather patterns and the physics and everything that we have to deal with. They're pretty extreme, right? So it's not an easy thing to do. And that's kind of one of the challenges that NASA takes on, right? Is we do the things that are hard, right? For exploration's sake and for the sake of all humanity. And then we bring our partners along to help us enable that mission, right?
So when you talk about partners, like how could somebody partner with you? Is it large, medium, and small? Is like where's the front door to come talk to you?
So the front door, the easiest way, if you do a Google search, you just type in NASA JSC front door, and it'll go right to that
Literally front door.
and it's I've got the website here, nasa.gov/Johnson/front door. And it'll unlock everything that industry needs, right? So in tonight, I'll show the folks. I'll walk them through that so that they can see. I've got a QR code that they can bump with their phones, and then we can go through that. Because what I want to have happen is when we leave here, they all have that on their phones, and they all understand. They know where to find the things that they're interested in. And so when we talk about making the connection, right?
Big time.
Yeah. So I think that's a good way to do that, and I think it'll add value. So so the front doors is one of the ways. Oftentimes, our programs will post things on LinkedIn. You can usually respond to that. There's always someone that does that, or walking through the innovation hubs. So like Q Branch or Swift, or just through there, someone comes in and say, "Hey, I've got an interest talking to NASA. Do you have a belly button that I can talk to?" And you say, "Yes."
Now I do. That's right.
Yeah. So when we talked about 2 handshakes away, right?
That you are spot on by saying that. It's the magic, right? That really is the connection. I can tell you right now, based upon this conversation, I may run into it, and it's not today or tomorrow. It could be even 3 weeks from now.
Correct.
That you can find that magic.
Right.
And it's like, oh my God, I know just the guy that you need to meet.
Yeah.
And then likely, boom, there's a connection by way of the technology, or of something else that can really put them on target.
Correct. Yeah. In my whole career, I got to float around all 19 strategic business units. We call them directorates. Floated between the center and the agency. So I know where all the cool stuff is. I know which doors to knock on. I know who are the smart people that are working on that stuff. I always tell folks a story that to this day, before my mom's passing, she always thought that I was an astronaut. And I was told, I'm not going to pop that bubble at all. Right. And I say that just that, we do know astronauts. We do know the rocket scientists. We do know who may be interested in the technology you're working on. We do know who may be able to help you, right, with your technology, or we do know who's running the program that matches best to your area of need or your area of interest. So,
and it's not just from within too. It's like the ancillary communities, right? Now the private markets that you've been attracting, you could say, look, it's not us. Actually, that fit or that collaboration could be had somewhere else.
Yeah, and I'd say, across Texas through the large economic development organizations, we're seeing a lot of them prop up aerospace committees within those. So we try to stay connected to those. Back at home, Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership, they have a big aerospace committee, which obviously is kind of the aggregate of most of the things down in Houston. They work with the Greater Houston Partnership down in San Antonio. The Greater Chamber has an aerospace committee. It was traditionally aviation. They kind of added a commercial space stuff just because they were starting to have a couple of companies begin to play in that space. One of them in lunar habitats. The other one was playing with, I say playing, I mean doing collaborations and participating in programs with the Hyperspace Challenge out of the Space Force over in New Mexico. And then you've got out in El Paso, is it the Space Coalition, Texas Space Coalition, I think, Michael's Pryor is out there. And then obviously we have the Texas Space Commission, the state level component. So everything's starting to get threaded together. Everybody knows each other now. And it's a good network, right? So our tagline used to be, we were the home of human exploration. We now say we are the hub of human exploration. We have all these nodes of innovation across the state of Texas, and we try to do what we can to go out into those regions, connect to them, make those connections back in Houston, or make them where they're at, right? Like right here in Austin. So
when you talk about connections, right? We have multiple international connections that we have made. So I don't know if you could maybe expand on the international community, because when you go to space,
Sure.
we have allied partners and even the International
Right.
Space Station. I don't know if
Correct.
you.
Yeah. So we've had international partners for quite a long while. If you think about when we were building the space station, let's just say starting in the early '80s. What is that? We're 46 years into knowing how to partner with internationals. I think the Artemis Accords, we just had Paraguay sign. So I think that may be the 67th country
Wow.
that is signed up on those accords. I mentioned before our legal team being really strong. We have a couple of folks that have been working those international agreements for a long time. They work with the agency folks as well. We have an Office of International Relations at NASA that gets pulled in. And we truly try to do what we can to, where they're integrated into the NASA mission, to make sure that it's a seamless integration and that it works, right? So yeah, it's one of our core competencies at JSC, I would say. And it is truly, I would say, the third leg of our exploration piece when it comes to, the government side, NASA side, industry, and then international partners, right?
The international partners.
So,
yeah, that's critical too. Look, I'm going to shift topics on you.
Sure.
One, we'd love to know, I mentioned earlier about the success stories of, thank you for the website, but, I was hoping to see a book. I don't know if you're a voracious reader. I like to ask our audience, what's everybody reading?
Yeah.
What's the hot topic right now? So what books are you reading,
Okay.
or have profoundly changed what you're doing now?
The books that sum up my random career that have kind of aggregated, the first one was Tom Peters' Thriving on Chaos. And that one was a lesson on learning how to work in the gray and being okay with it. Right. And I think it's not unlike, fast moving market sectors where you've got to pay attention to signals. Right. And you've got to respond accordingly instead of just reacting randomly. So thriving on chaos. And I've always worked in the gray, even to the point where, knowing when to bubble up and lead, and then knowing when to go sit at the back of the bus and just kind of stay for a while. But while you're doing that, still working strategy, right? Still making things happen behind the scenes, and being okay. Like when we did the pivot, right? And we're kind of in a pivot as well right now. And it is an incredible pivot that is going to be tremendously successful. So the Thriving on Chaos helps you be okay with change, right? The other one was called Switch. Right. Yeah, it's Dan and Chip Heath, How to Change Things When Things Are Hard. Yeah. And so it kind of plays off of the Thriving on Chaos, right? And it gives you strategies, basically how to break things down into almost like first principle problems. Just what is the fundamental truth right here, right? What I have in front of me, what do I have to deal with right now? Right. And so that one was a good one. The other one, it was one I read in the 90s, and it was when I was doing Free Willy back in 93. It was Tony Robbins, Awakening the Giant Within. That one for me gave me insight into human cadence and modalities, how to meet people where they're at, how to create paradigm shifts when you're trying to problem solve. It wasn't unlike my design background where, we had professors put us on drafting tables, have us close our eyes, grab a piece of fruit, and then just describe it like in a poetry form, and then turn around and draw the poem. Oh. Right. So he's just trying to unlock this other side. And that book really did it. And it's simple, but it's incredible. So I don't know if you've ever talked to someone, you're like, hey, you explain something to them. They're like, oh, I feel you, man. Right. Or someone's like, oh, I hear what you're saying. Or someone's like, oh, I see what you're saying. Or they say, I think that's a good idea. Right. They just gave you 4 clues to their modalities.
Oh, okay.
right? So one's
So read
tangible,
that.
I feel you, right? The other one's I hear you, so it's auditory, right? The other one is like I think, so they're very logical, cerebral, right? The other one I see you, right? And
I'd
then
love to read Tony Robbins in today's society, right? Like, because
yeah,
my kids just say, bruh. Where's the I feel, I think, I like, what is it,
yeah.
the enunciation of bruh?
Yeah. I'm sure there's something in there, the updated version. But that book was good because when you're managing in the gray and you're managing the chaos, you're responsible for making connections. You have to be aware of people's sensitivities. Are they in a stress state? Are they embracing the change? Right? Where are they at? And then within that, what's their how do I package this? Right? What's the right way? Right? And then there's a timing component that gets layered on top of that as well. So those things kind of really laid a good foundation for what I did. And then you throw on top of that, growing up military, right? Where you had to show up, you were the new kid. I went to 4 schools in 4 years. You had to make friends fast or decide you were just going to be a loner, right? You had to
Right.
assimilate. You had to use different mechanisms to find a way, either, orchestra or
And
band
each environment,
or
each city
sports.
was
Yeah, it
different
was
in that
different.
way.
The cultures are different, right? And just it's so that layered onto it. The book that I'm kind of working through right now is the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
It's a classic.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. The pieces that I like, obviously, there's the 48 laws that you can just go to Google and it'll give you the 48 laws. But I like reading the historical perspectives of how, like, ancient times, the Greeks, the Romans, right, all those civilizations,
Put them into practice.
put them into practice, and then you can fast forward them and take a look at some very difficult corporate conversations that occur, right? Or you see things in the news and you're like, wow, okay, it kind of makes things make sense.
Right.
Um,
It's patterns. It's recognizing that.
right. And then you recognize that, as you move higher up to power, right? It's a different set of rules that you have to be very aware of. But understanding that kind of helps you when you're making these connections or working, understanding protocols.
Just alone, you're perfect for the job, right? And just your personal experiences, the fact
Yeah.
that you've designed, you've had to think strategically, and so when you're at this point of commercialization, right, or that's like one of many things that you're doing, but it's at the intersection, right? There's a cross-functionality
Correct.
of the effort and
Correct.
mapping the success of it, or immediately the switch or the pivot.
Correct.
In that way.
Yeah. It's you kind of got to have an antenna on all the time.
So what is the biggest need of your organization right now? How can Texas help, or how can startups or other organizations support you in your mission?
I would say we need folks to be aware that there are programs available for them to leverage for their personal business, but also there are ways for them to map into the NASA mission through this front door, right? I think it's easier than it's ever been. I think the gates of Johnson Space Center are more open now than they ever been. I think it's an incredible time for people with brilliant ideas to come in and showcase those for folks to take advantage of these programs. Even when if you think about throughput of intellectual infrastructure, and I use the term intellectual infrastructure when we're trying to build the brains that enable the mission, right? From, say 8th grade into high school into college, right? Even on our academic side, the career and technical education side of NASA, we've got incredible programs that will allow a kid to stay with the NASA program and move into these different programs as they graduate into these different academic levels, right? And then work their way all the way into what we call NASA pathways internships, right? And so there's this nice program or series of programs that are available. And we encourage the school districts and whatnot to look at those. We encourage students UT or wherever, aerospace, where you're looking for business people, communications people, all kinds. Folks that have cyber backgrounds right now through our NASA Force initiative, where we are looking to inject NASA and the Johnson Space Center with super intelligent folks and different technical domains for these terms. So it's not unlike industry when in industry we do surge hiring for special projects where we got to push, right? We've got to push to get things to market or get things solved. That's exactly what we're doing with this NASA Force, right? And there's a lot of opportunities out there for
those are like
folks.
hard problems that you need to surge.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. And we do it all the time in industry. Is
task force,
right?
You hire consultants to surge on
this. But the NASA Force, I think it's a great opportunity for folks to come in and really create a mark with NASA and help us kind of push our mission forward.
That's amazing. One of the biggest things that I start thinking about is you guys are based in Houston. Mm-hmm. How much outreach, aside from just you getting on an airplane, going out there, are there substations that, if I were, I don't see, you see Chick-fil-A's everywhere.
Like,
right, is NASA's vision to kind of
franchise JSC, or like the satellite DMV offices.
Yeah, are you getting outside of the wall? Because the Army has tried to do that, right?
Yeah.
They've set up, and the Defense Innovation Unit, they've kind of come outside the wire,
right,
to really embed in the industry. I don't know if that's on your roadmap.
So it is. We are geographically dispersed across the U.S., right, from East Coast, Third Coast, all the way to West Coast. We got elements out in Hawaii, tracking system stuff. We do analogs out in Hilo, Hawaii. There's a lot of folks on the program side that are out and about. I don't think we have little satellite offices per se, but I think our agency as a whole does a really good job making sure that we're connecting to our constituents in the different regions. It's kind of like it's a weird analogy, but you don't really think about Chevy El Caminos. But the minute you start thinking about them, you get in your car and you're driving down the highway. I'll be dang, you see 2 or 3 of them.
That's right.
It's the same way at NASA. You can look around. You're gonna see people wearing the NASA logo.
Oh yeah, bumper stickers. It's actually my son sweats sweatshirts.
Yeah, the hoodies.
Right? The hoodies. Thank you, hoodies. I knew there was a cooler term.
Right.
NASA is pretty popular.
Yeah, and I would say. Our
the swag.
Our engineers and folks that work on NASA, when they can get out and go connect, they do. Great. It's almost a necessity now, right? It's particularly with, back in the day, everything was within the fence line of the Johnson Space Center. Now you've got things being developed in San Antonio and Austin and Brownsville and El Paso, right? McGregor, Texas, right? You got things in
Midland, Texas.
Yeah, Midland. You got stuff going on in Pittsburgh, right? You got all these pieces of the human exploration puzzle that are now dispersed in these, what I call communities of innovation, right? And so making sure they're connected back to us, it's a critical piece of the puzzle, making sure that we're out and about.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're on a mission, and in most movies, they give the guy on the mission a call sign. I prepped you with the call sign.
Yeah.
So, just to let everybody know, thank you for, sharing with us, but you're on a mission, and I know folks are going to want to support you on the mission, but what's your call sign if you had to give yourself one?
I don't know. The only one that came up is hoagie.
Hoagie.
And it's like a sandwich maker. So I bring...
To make a sandwich.
Yeah. So we've got all the content, all the programs, all the capabilities, everything that we need to enable industry and economic development and viability in these regions so they can feed back into the NASA mission. And then also the industry side as well. And I bring the NASA side of the puzzle, the industry side, and I bring them together along these programs. And then you've got I've got a good sandwich. So, hoagie. That's what I came up with.
I love it. I think that is perfect. I love it. Great call sign. Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
I know that everyone's going to be excited about this one. They're going to want to connect to you,
Sure.
whether they be in the public, private, small, big, medium, and large. You know, NASA is one of the premier institutions of the United States of America and allies around, and it's what's happening on the globe, but even off the globe.
Correct.
It's where we're
Yeah.
going to take it.
Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right.